Hi, I'm Shannon Knutson. I am a sexual assault nurse examiner for both adults and pediatrics. I'm also a certified forensic nurse. I work with both Polk County, Story County, and the state of Iowa to provide technical assistance on the medical forensic exam. So we'll start with the sexual assault kit. This is what the sexual assault kit looks like. It should be unopened when you start an exam. And then once you open the kit, the nurse has to stay with the kit the entire time till it is handed off to law enforcement. So if the nurse forgets something in a different room, if a pen breaks or they need additional supplies, every bit of the kit and the contents goes with that nurse. It should not be left unattended. An advocate cannot be responsible for it. The patient cannot. Anybody else in the room cannot be responsible for it. The only person who's responsible for the entire contents of the kit is the nurse. And that will testify to chain of custody and passing off the information as far as what is in it. So everybody should follow their protocol to make sure that that chain of custody is maintained throughout the process. So to begin the exam, you would have to have gloves. Once you open the kit, you need to have gloves on at all times. And then additionally, the nurse is going to change their gloves multiple times throughout the process of collecting the evidence in the kit. So I'm going to open this kit. And I will also tell you that this kit is set up for cisgender women, but it is absolutely acceptable to be used for men and trans and non-binary folks. So it might feel a little bit clumsy, but all the contents in here can easily be changed and adapted to your patient's needs. So the front of the kit will also document that chain of custody. We're not going to worry about that right now. So I'm going to open the kit. In the kit is a package of paperwork that will be important for the nurse to fill out, and then information to go home with the patient. So also you should know that in the next version is going to be additional paperwork put in pertaining to consents. So that the patient consents to a medical exam and consents to having evidence collected, and also that they have the option to report anonymously as well, or not report at all. So those paperwork will be in the kit as well going forward in the next version. Right now they're currently not in the kit. So if I open up my package of papers here, some of the paperwork in here explains how to do a kit. So this is the steps of the kit. As long as you have a trained SANE nurse, they shouldn't need that, and that can actually go right to the garbage then. The other paperwork in here will go home with the victim, and it just explains the procedure as far as what was done, who to contact afterwards, some resources to get in contact with the Iowa Coalition, the Attorney General's office, and HIV testing centers in the state of Iowa. There will also be a ruler in this bag, so this ruler can be used to help with measuring any injuries that you see for documentation. And then there is our evidence label and our biohazard stickers. So the biohazard sticker I put on the front of the kit right away so I don't lose that, like that. And then my evidence labels I'm going to initial and then sign those before I seal my kit up. So for right now I'm just going to put those in there. Also, I get a lot of questions sometimes about, do I have to wear a gown or a mask when I'm working with the kit? You do not have to wear a gown or a mask unless I tell people if you have a cold or something that maybe you'll be coughing or sneezing more than normal, then you might want to consider wearing a gown or a mask. But otherwise right now our crime lab does not require that you have to wear a gown or a mask to work with the contents of the kit. However, if you are doing a suspect exam and that nurse also did the victim exam, then they definitely should be wearing a gown when they're collecting that evidence, unless they have completely changed their clothes or you have a different nurse. So then I have this form here that goes in with the kit. This asks for the patient's account of what happened and what you're collecting. So with this form in particular, you should know that it is not to be an in-depth detail of the account for the victim. So this here should basically give the lab an idea of why I've collected what I have collected. So why I collected a vaginal swab, because there was potential evidence that I thought might be found there. So it's just a quick recap of that patient's account that the nurse is going to write here, but it should not be as in detail or in depth of that. So this form will get filled out. It needs to go back in the kit and sent to the lab. So I'm also going to take this plastic sack and put over here because that's what I'm going to send home with the patient. So next I have my bag for underwear. Underwear is a pretty standard collection, so it would be very unusual to not collect underwear from any patient. So I would collect that. You need to fill out the whole the sticker here on the front of the envelope with the patient's name, when it was collected, if it was worn immediately after or not. And so for this one, I mark, if I don't collect underwear, then I mark no, it wasn't collected, and I put a reason why. Whether that's the patient declined, the patient didn't have them, whatever that reason is, just so that the lab knows and they're not wondering maybe this piece got lost or is missing. So then the patient would collect that. Well, the patient would take their underwear off and place them in the bag. And then I will fold the top of that over, and I will take one of my evidence labels that I've signed and seal across the back like that. So this will let law enforcement know that this has not been tampered with once it's open at the crime lab. So that will go back in there then. Then I have an envelope for miscellaneous collection. So there might be debris, any secretions, fingernail scrapings. If my patient was found in a cornfield and they have a lot of debris on them, any of those articles would go in this envelope. So I may not always use this envelope, and what I don't use can just go in the garbage. Like, you don't have to send that into the lab. The lab has said they do not need those parts. But if there's part of your information that you provide on this form that would indicate that they should be looking for something like that, then you should mark that you didn't collect it so that they're not wondering where it ended up at. But if there's no indication, then you don't need to include this in the kit. But if I were going to collect it, there is multiple swabs and boxes in here. So you make your boxes up. And then you need to put the area that you collected this from. So if it is their left thigh, then you would write left thigh. Additionally, on the front of the envelope, you can mark on here left thigh. You can put a mark to indicate where that was collected from. So there is multiple ones. If you need them, you can use them. If you don't, again, they can be discarded. So your Q-tips are the same as all the other packages. Again, when the nurse is collecting these, this 2 equals 1. So they should always be using the 2 swabs together as if it's 1 swab. Once they collect it, it's going to go back. It's going to go in the box. Seal that up, and then you'll put it in the envelope. This is my miscellaneous one. So again, there's extra things in here that may or may not be needed. So that would go in here and sealed. If I needed to collect other items, I do have a bindle in here that I can use to collect any debris that may be loose. I can put that in here. If I'm going to do a fingernail scraping, I can put that in here as well, the scrapings. And then you would include that scraper in there as well. And then you can include, just package it all in there. So then you'll seal. These are self-sealing and once you remove the back, so do not lick these. And then you'll seal it. You'll have it all labeled. If there's indication as to collecting it and you don't, then you should mark no and why. So then you'll put that in there. Next I have oral swabs. So oral swabs are collected if there's been an oral assault. It is just our box and our swabs. So you'll make your box up. And these are all cardboard, which is paper. Every bit of the contents in here is, so it is all breathable. You do not have to wait for these to dry for hours or anything like that. Every bit of it can breathe, so it can all go back in here fairly quickly after you collect it. So you would collect the oral swab, again, 2 swabs as one, and that nurse would put those back in the kit, in the box, in the envelope, seal it, and then obviously have the front filled out. I like to fill out my envelopes all ahead of time so that they're all done and ready. So as I collect them and put them back in here, it's just good to go on to the next. An anal swab, again, looks the same as that oral swab as far as just the Q-tips and the box to make up. So if I'm going to collect an anal swab, I would do that just like I did the oral in the collection. Again, have everything filled out, and that goes in here as well. The nurse is going to be changing her gloves, like I said at the beginning, frequently throughout this. So definitely between that oral swab or a buccal swab and then going to the vaginal or anal area, they will have a glove change in there for sure. So next is vaginal swabs. Again, same as the other ones. You just have your box and your 2 swabs here. So they would do that vaginal swab collection, package it up in here, and label it. This is one where typically if you have a male patient, they'll probably cross out vaginal on here and write penile swab. But again, any of these envelopes can be used for that. So if they're not collecting an anal swab, they can certainly use the anal swab envelope and cross that out and mark whatever it is that they're collecting. There's nothing magical about the swabs in here to say that these can only be used in the vagina. They're all the same. There's no magical enzymes or anything like that to say it can't be used elsewhere in the body. Just cross out and label what you're using. Then we have our buccal swabs. So our buccal swab is for our known DNA. So this tells me who my patient is. Again, it is collected with just the 2 Q-tips. You then make their box up and put it in here. So the buccal swab would be collected as long as there is not an oral assault. If there was an oral assault, then the buccal swab would likely not be collected unless you have a child. If you have a child, then I always collect the buccal swab and an oral swab. Worst case scenario, their DNA is not going to change. So worst case scenario, they have to go back and get a buccal swab from them again later at another time, but their DNA won't change. So the problem is if there's an oral assault, there's a good chance that you'll get both the patient's DNA and the perpetrator's DNA on this. So that's why you would collect a blood sample instead, which is the next one. So the blood sample is here. Again, this is for known DNA. So if I'm collecting a buccal swab, I do not need to collect a blood sample. If I'm collecting a blood sample, I do not need to collect a buccal swab. So in here is the kit to collect the blood sample. Obviously, as I said at the beginning, we fill out each envelope, the front of it, document that appropriately. Here we have, again, another place to document the patient's information. So a patient label works great to put here. And then we have our blot card to collect that blood. So if I'm going to be collecting a blood sample for my known DNA, I have my HemaQ here to collect that. These can be tricky. Lots of people struggle with these and end up throwing them away and having to go get a different one. So the trick to these is you push down and you twist this until the orange cap pops off. And then when it pops off, it's set and you can use that. So if you just pull it off or you just push it down and pull it off, it will not work. So then you would poke the patient's finger, and then you could collect that blood sample on each one of these circles. The circles do not need to be filled entirely, but aim for about half of each circle to be filled. So then after you have half of each of those circles filled, you would close that up, package it in here, remove my seal, and in the kit. Then I like to just go through, verify that I've labeled everything appropriately on the front, I've collected everything, I haven't missed anything, and then I put those back in the kit. Also with my miscellaneous, if I've used my alternative light source and have had a positive illumination, then I would want to be sure to swab that area. And I would indicate on here positive ALS, which stands for alternative light source illumination. So that's all in here. I have my paperwork that I like to put on the top. So that goes on the top so that when they open the kit, they have that right there easily accessible. I'm going to seal it up. I take my evidence labels. And now I fill out the front of my kit. So my patient's name, my physician is my medical director. Kit sealed by is going to be me, the hospital that I collected it at. And I've called law enforcement at this time. I'm waiting for them to come pick up the kit. They arrived to pick up the kit because law enforcement does have to take this. It is not optional. If I've collected it, they have to collect it. I cannot store it. I can't carry it in the trunk of my car until they call me and tell me that they need it. The hospital is not responsible for keeping it. It does go to law enforcement. They have to come and get this to take. Again, the patient can report anonymously, so it doesn't have to be the patient's name. You may have a unique identifier number here, or whatever the patient tells you that their name is. If they want to make up a name, that is fine too. So when law enforcement comes, I'm going to sign received from on this part here. So that is my name as the nurse, the date and the time, and then law enforcement is received by. They will sign time and date that as well. And then I make a copy of the front of this so that I have documentation that they actually came and collected it. If at some point 6 months down the road they said I never got that kit, I can go back to my charting and say, yes, you did. Officer so-and-so came and picked it up at this time on this date. You need to check with them as far as where that kit is. Maybe it's in the evidence locker. So then this goes to law enforcement. Law enforcement will come and get that kit.
So Shannon, one more question. When an advocate comes to the hospital and they're there for the entire kit, about how long might they expect that to take?
Sure. So a SANE exam should typically last about 3 to 4 hours on average. The kit collection process, once the kit is open, anywhere from 20 minutes to about 45 minutes. If my patient has a lot of injuries, it might take a little bit longer. But once the kit is open, about 20-ish minutes to that 45-minute mark, depending on the amount of injuries. The other thing that would be important to know is that it may depend on how much the patient wants done and what their comfort level is. So at any point, the patient can say, I don't want you to collect that. I don't want that done. I need a break, and all of that is acceptable. So it is truly patient guided. But an average exam start to finish would take about 3 to 4 hours.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. That is it for kit collection.